Have you ever looked at your paycheck, see the huge chunk missing for taxes, and wonder how the wealthiest people on earth seem to pay, well, next to nothing? The answer isn't just some clever accounting trick, it's a place. A tiny group of islands in the Caribbean that has become a financial black hole, swallowing up wealth from the global economy. It's an idyllic paradise that legally shields staggering amounts of money, with some estimates as high as $4 trillion, much of it coming from the United States. This is the story of the Cayman Islands, and we're about to show you the exact system billionaires and mega corporations use to make their fortunes vanish from the taxman's reach, all in plain sight. So, what makes this small British overseas territory with a population that could fit inside a football stadium the world's leading offshore financial hub? Why the Caymans over, say, Bermuda or Bahamas? While they all have a role, the Caymans are in a different league. It all comes down to a perfectly engineered ecosystem built on three things: zero tax, intense secrecy, and a sterling reputation. First, the obvious one: tax. The Cayman Islands has no corporate tax, no personal income tax, and no capital gains tax. Nothing. For a multinational corporation or a billionaire, this is the ultimate financial dream. Profits made anywhere in the world can be legally parked in the Caymans, where they stay completely untouched by any tax authority. This has attracted over 100 banks and, as of 2025, a combined total of over 30,000 mutual and private funds. Second is a mastery of legal secrecy. The days of totally anonymous bank accounts may be over, but the Caymans have refined that art of privacy. For years, the Tax Justice Network's Financial Secrecy Index ranked at the Caymans as one of the world's top enablers of financial secrecy. Not because their laws are crude, but because they are incredibly complex. The island's entire legal framework is built around companies, trusts, and partnerships that are wrapped in layers of privacy, creating a maze that's incredibly difficult, time-consuming, and expensive for foreign governments to navigate. And finally, there's prestige. The Cayman Islands isn't some shady, rogue nation. It's a stable British territory with a sophisticated legal system based on English common law. This gives it an air of legitimacy that attracts the world's biggest hedge funds and institutional investors. It's close to the US, English-speaking, and offers a premium, reliable service for moving and managing billions. This combination turned it into a magnet for the world's elite. Okay, but how does it really work? How does a billionaire in New York or a tech giant in Silicon Valley move their money to this island to legally sidestep taxes? They use a toolkit of legal structures designed for one purpose: to build a financial fortress. The most basic tool is the exempted company. You can set one up in the Caymans in as little as 24 hours for a few $1,000s. These companies are exempt from any future taxes the islands might ever create, and more importantly, they don't have to file public financial records. They're essentially ghost corporations, legal entities that exist only on paper, designed to hold assets and do nothing else. But the real trick, a stunning maneuver brought to light by a US Senate investigation, is what's been called the shell bank loophole. Here's the simplified version. A wealthy person sets up a Caymanian ghost corporation. That shell company then registers with the IRS as a foreign financial institution. Suddenly, this paper-only company, with no office and no employees, is legally seen as a bank. Under tax reporting laws like FATCA, a Swiss bank has to tell the IRS about an account held by an American. But if that account is held by a Caymanian shell company that's also a bank, the reporting can get murky, creating a legal shell that obscures the true American owner. Then there's a dominant force in the Caymans, the hedge fund industry. The islands are the world's #1 home for hedge funds for a reason. Funds set up here can pull money from investors anywhere, invest it globally, and pay zero tax on the profits within the Cayman structure. It's a perfectly legal system of Russian nesting dolls, where each layer of ownership makes it harder to see who's really at the center. For decades, this system hummed along quietly in the background, but every now and then, the walls of the fortress crack, and we can get a peek at the mind-boggling scale of the wealth being hidden. The most explosive example is the case of Robert Brockman, a Texas software billionaire in what prosecutors called the largest tax evasion case in US history. He was accused of hiding an astonishing $2 billion from the IRS over 2 decades. How exactly? By using a dizzying web of offshore entities, including trusts and shell companies in places like Bermuda and the Cayman Islands. His scheme was the perfect illustration of the system, using a network of offshore structures to hide the income and control assets that were secretly his. Though Brockman passed away in 2022 before his trial ended, his estate agreed to a massive settlement in late 2025, paying $750 million back in taxes and penalties. The Brockman case wasn't a one-off. It was a symptom of a global issue blown wide open by the 2021 Panama Papers. This huge leak of financial files from offshore service providers implicated hundreds of politicians, celebrities, and billionaires. It revealed a shadow economy where the global elite used tax havens like the Cayman Islands and the British Virgin Islands to secretly buy property, hide assets, and dodge taxes. The Panama Papers confirmed by the Cayman status as a premier destination for the sophisticated corporate and financial maneuvering. These scandals have exposed the deep inequality backed into our global financial system. While regular people can face audits for tiny mistakes, a parallel universe exists where hiding billions is a sophisticated and often legal business. For years, the world's government have been playing a game of cat and mouse with tax havens. Under pressure from groups like the OECD and the European Union, things have started to change. The era of absolute, no questions asked banking secrecy is completely over. Thanks to frameworks like Common Reporting Standard, also known as the CRS, over 100 countries now automatically exchange information about bank accounts held by foreign residents. This means, if you open an account in the Caymans, your home country's tax authority is supposed to find out about it. In response, the Cayman Islands passed its own new laws. The Beneficial Ownership Transparency Act, rolled out and expanded through 2024 and 2025, requires companies to identify their ultimate beneficial owners, the actual people who own or control them, and report this to a central government platform. However, this information is still not public. Access is mostly restricted to government agencies investigating financial crime. The Cayman Islands government insists it's a transparent and cooperative partner, not a secrecy haven. They point to being removed from the Financial Action Task Force's grey list in 2023 as proof they are fighting money laundering. They're even preparing for a major valuation in 2027 by launching a national risk assessment to further strengthen their rules. But critics argue these are often patchwork reforms designed to do just enough to get by. The system isn't disappearing, it's just adapting. As old loopholes are patched, new, more complex ones are being engineered. So, are the days of the Cayman Islands as a financial fortress numbered? Well, not quite. The world of offshore finance isn't ending, it's just evolving. The game has become more regulated and compliance is more expensive, but the core traction is still there. Zero tax, wealth is no longer just hidden, it's structured for maximum tax efficiency. The battle has now shifted to transparency. While governments can get more information than before, the fundamental structures that allow the staggering levels of tax avoidance are still perfectly legal. The trillions of dollars flowing through the Caymans represent tax revenue lost to countries all over the world. Money that could be paying for hospitals, schools, and roads. The story of the Cayman Islands shows a fundamental truth about our modern economy. There are two sets of rules, one for you, the average taxpayer, and another for the ultra-wealthy who can afford an army of lawyers and accountants to play in its parallel financial universe. The real, multi-trillion-dollar question is no longer just how they do it, but how long the rest of the world will let it happen.